All right, so let me get started by getting a show of hands of people who believe that systemic racism is an issue. Great, that's a lot of us. I'm glad to see it. With the growth in media exposure of movements of resistance like Black Lives Matter and No DAPL, we live in a time when it's become much more common to hear and talk about the ways in which systems of oppression, especially racism, impact the institutions and cultures that we are a part of. Even though some might still disagree that it's an issue, and getting to the point of exposure has been a long struggle, as an educator who works closely with young people of color, it's important for me to be able to name that a system like racism is not just a few isolated incidents that happen between people. Instead, it's embedded in the rules and habits of entire political, economic, and social systems like schools that directly impact my students, my community, and myself. Being able to name that helps me challenge and disrupt racism every day. The same goes with the naming of other oppressions like sexism, classism, cis-heterosexism, and ableism. Today, I want to talk about another system of oppression that I think way too often is invisible and considered a non-issue in our global society: ageism. Ageism is the stereotyping and discriminating of people on the basis of their age. The term was coined in 1969 by Robert Neal Butler to describe the discrimination faced by seniors. But in my view, ageism is also an issue and an obstacle for youth. If you're a young person, you face ageism everywhere. Adults and institutions upheld by adults regularly commit acts of ageism every day. It's when adults tell you to act your age, or do as I say, or question, what do you know, because you're just a kid. It's when businesses and public spaces have signs that say under 18s must be accompanied by an adult, because they assume that you can be responsible for yourself otherwise. It's when teachers and principals make rules at school that are meant for your own good without consulting you. It's when you need to get adult consent for medical decisions that affect your body in order to get treatment like hormone therapy or some forms of reproductive health services. Most of the time, it's just adults making decisions for youth without inviting youth to the table or acknowledging that we are there and have something to contribute. On a more institutional level, ageism accounts for the fact that people under the age of 18 have no political voice, no right to vote or be represented in public office. Adults make the rules that govern us on a personal level, like at homes and in schools, as well as a systemic level through the laws they make. Young people have to earn their legitimacy by showing that they can conform to adultness or wait for more freedoms by getting older. In this way, ageism means that the more you can conform to adultness, the more trust, rights, and responsibilities adults will give you. When I was a student, but especially when I was a teacher, I saw this all the time. If you can be obedient, follow the rules, not cause any trouble, respect authority, then you're seen as a good kid, and adults are more likely to give you special choices, privileges, or the benefit of the doubt. But if you can't follow the rules and you disrupt or talk too much or question authority, then you're seen as someone who needs to be controlled and punished until you can learn how to behave. I'm sure as I'm saying this, you can think of where you fall along the lines with adults yourself and can think of a couple classmates or friends who always seem to be getting in trouble because they can't follow the rules that adults expect them to. In many ways, this is similar to how dominant society tells people of color that if we conform to whiteness and white cultural norms by going to college, getting good jobs, following the rules, and not protesting, then we too can earn respectability in the public eye. What's different, though, is that all people have faced ageism and endured it. When I was younger, adults in my life, like my parents, my teachers, my neighbors, were always telling me what and how and when to do things without inviting me to be critical about why I should be doing those things. When I would ask why, they would say, because I said so, or those are just the rules. They would see it as subversive. But are they good rules? Are they fair rules? Who made the rules, and who do those rules benefit? Adults wanted me to sit still and be quiet. They would say, you can't wear that where we're going. But they always thought that I was too young to talk about power and structural oppression, and why specifically the young daughter of Asian immigrants couldn't be loud, unruly, or boyish in public. Now that I'm 26, I have a lot more say. But people who are older than me will presume that they know more about the world than I do. In graduate school, people who have been at the school longer than I have will presume that they have more knowledge or experience about what we're studying than I do. Older adults will presume that my ideas about activism and social change are naive. And in turn, when I go work with students, I can carry ageist assumptions into my work as well. I can forget that young people are just as knowledgeable, intelligent, creative, and capable as I am, if not more so. Which is to say that in order to be an adult in our society, you at some point have been a young person who is treated in the same ageist way that you now treat the young people in your life. Even older youth will treat younger youth in an ageist way. And this is significant because ageism is the first and most pervasive way that we are all taught to be obedient and unquestioning of our situations, accepting rather than disrupting or resisting our oppressions. Adults will say, obviously I have to treat the young people in my life this way. Children need rules and guidance. That's why I do what I do. I make sure that my kids have the structure they need to grow and be safe and good people. Once they get older, I'll give them more freedom. I can't deny most of that. Many of the important adults in our lives make sure we have what we need to grow, navigate society, and hopefully flourish in it. But what I will say is that oftentimes the lack of trust in the ways we deal with young people is colored by our own experiences growing up in an ageist society. Many times we decide for young people what good people should be instead of challenging them to think critically about this themselves. But as we've seen in recent movements of resistance, young people have extraordinary power and potential. Youth all over the world have played a leading role in organizing hunger strikes, boycotts, and other forms of nonviolent direct action that have directly resulted in change. Oftentimes, youth have the most radical and creative ideas of how to speak truth to power or reclaim it. Youth activists like Shutezcott Martinez, Mary Copney, Skylar Baylar, and Joshua Wong, as well as youth collectives like Hala in New York City, are just some of the more visible young people who are changing the game when it comes to reimagining a more just and equitable future. They have spoken truth to power on environmental justice issues like climate change and clean water in Flint, advocated for gender justice and trans inclusion in collegiate sports, and led pro-democratic national revolutions in their countries. There would be many more youth and youth collectives getting the resources and platform they need to do their work if ageism weren't as imposing of a barrier to being taken seriously in an adult-centric world. So what do? If ageism is such an ingrained oppression that everyone has faced it and thus sees justification to perpetuate it, how do we challenge it? For people of any age who are looking to do something about ageism, here are 3 things to consider. 1, challenge ageist assumptions. In conversations in your life where people make ageist assumptions or use ageist language, challenge them. When someone says, so-and-so is too young to know how to do that, ask them what they mean. Question the adults in your life who love working with young people. Are they really there listening to, respecting, and supporting youth? Or are they more interested in controlling youth, making young people into adults like themselves? In the institutions you belong to, examine the rules that are based in ageism and look up the ones that make older people authority figures. For instance, should the student council president of a high school be a high school senior? Why not a freshman or sophomore? Should we be referring to teachers by title and last name? Where did that tradition come from? 2, use terms that empower youth instead of terms that baby youth. Instead of using terms like kiddos or little ones that undermine youth power, use terms like youth or young people that emphasize personhood over childhood. Better yet, ask the youth in your life what they prefer to be called. 3, invite young people to be active participants in decision-making. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a community member, or an older sibling, friend, or cousin to a younger person, invite them to help you make the important decisions in your life, especially those that affect them. Be willing to learn from someone who's younger than you, and resist dismissing their ideas as childish or naive. Encourage young people to speak their truth, and share your truth with young people too. If you're a younger person in the audience, make sure that you're advocating for yourself when you're with adults. Of course, this is by no means a formal list of ways to deal with ageism. In fact, it's a list that should be continually refined and co-constructed with youth. What more would you add? I challenge you to create community together and share the ways that ageism has impacted your life so that you can work together to resist it. Thank you.